C was some upgrades to a couple of athletic facilities, a couple of
to bring equity.
Yeah, to bring equity among the middle schools
and the high schools.
And it was some athletic facilities, like certain facilities don't have enough bleachers or restrooms or things of that nature. So, whether again that may be considered fluff for some people, but if you're a kid who goes to maybe Frank Seal and they don't have bleachers and a restroom at their fields, that may not be fluff to you. That's kind of a necessity. So those things were just to bring those campuses up to parity. We as a board said, hey, if this is what our community committee is recommending, we just decided as a board that we would put that forth to the voter and let them speak to us on that. Our discussion the other night was the fact that, the community spoke and they felt none of it was necessary. And we had a very candid discussion about the fact that, we need a couple of elementaries to come on board within the next 2.5 years. And to be honest, if we don't put this before the voters again in a package that they're comfortable with, we're going to be behind an 8 ball. Because if you go to any other district that gets in this position, it's like the problem happens, DV, is that okay, so let's say we don't pass a bond in the 2.5 years. Well, you're going to have elementary schools. You're going to have some that have capacity and some that are out of capacity. What that creates is a position where we as a school board have to say, okay, we don't have enough schools on the ground. We're going to have to redistrict. And we're going to have to move people from other elementaries to a new elementary. And that makes nobody happy until we can then get a school on the ground. And guess what? Your kid may go to that school for a year or two. And then once the school's built, we're going to rezone them back to that proper. And that's just not that's not a situation we want to be in as a district. Right. We know the needs there. We know the children are coming. And so we need to do a better job telling that story and explaining to the public why we need these schools. And the board took partial responsibility. Our bond guys, WRA, were there to explain and offer different things that we could do. And so we as a board haven't made any decisions. You saw that. There was just a ton of discussion. And that's why there's 7 of us. There were 7 different opinions of what was necessary and what was fluff. And that's all good because to me, that represents the community well, right? Mm-hmm. So what we have decided is that next Monday at the board meeting, we've asked the staff and our bond, consultants, our bond consultants to come back to us on Monday with a new plan. And we basically just put the parameters on it, what's in Prop A. And then Sandy was going to go back to the different department heads and try to figure out, what are the true non-negotiables? What are the true necessities for this bond? And I don't know how it's going to be packaged. I'm hopeful that we could come back out in November just so that we could stay ahead of that growth pattern and that we don't have to be the district that you come to where your kid's going to get rezoned 3 times in the 5 years they're in elementary. That's what we want to avoid. And, that's what parents want to avoid, honestly. We hear all the time how disruptive it is and how hard it is for kids to move schools, make new friends, all the things, right? And so we want to be proactive as a district and as a board to stay ahead of that growth so that we don't have to do that here if we can help it at all.
No, before like I definitely, one of the things that I saw in covering this county and bonds this year was Red Oak. Now, Red Oak had their bond failed 4 times, I think it was. And then it passed this last time. And the difference that I saw was a big push in communication. And it was a concerted effort to, I'm sorry, my phone has a mind of its own. So there was a concerted effort to get, that point across. We need schools. This is why. And this time there was a big effort on the ground. There was a big ground game to talk to people. Maybe people didn't feel talked to enough or more informed enough, and they voted the way they did on the MISD. Now, one of the things that were mentioned yesterday there was demographer reports that were out. Sandy, can you speak a little more about the demographer reports specifically? Because this is one of the things that you were pointing out that we really needed were elementary schools. Mm-hmm. How is it going to affect our elementary schools, the growth?
Sure. So our latest demographer report shows that, one second, let me get on that page so I'll make sure I'm accurate. That will be over capacity at one of our elementary schools in 25-26. And then The next year, we will be over capacity at 2 additional schools. So that's why it's so important to go ahead and get the bond passed as soon as possible, because it takes 16 to 18 months to construct an elementary school. Plus you have to throw in a few months for design, anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So you're talking about a 2-year process just to get an elementary school from start to occupied.
What
Well,
does
and
that-
our consultants also threw out there last night, DV, is that a lot of the components of the school, and I didn't realize this because I'm not a construction minded person, but they said that with the supply chain issues, that right now there's lots of things that they have a 12-month wait on. So like from the time they order certain materials and certain like, I don't know, it's crazy things like door handles. And I remember at one of our schools, light fixtures were a problem. That some of those things take like 12 months lead time before you ever get them to the building. And so those are still some other things that we're dealing with as far as the construction side as well on those things.
What does overcapacity look like, Cindy? What does that look like? Does it look like 50 students in a class? What does, I mean, realistically, what does that look like?
Well, you either go over capacity, or like she said, you have to rezone those kids to another school.
Mhm.
So that's going to cause kids to go to maybe a school for 1 year and then have to switch again to another year. So you can get more than capacity into a school. It's not the most optimal learning situation for those children. We like to keep our class sizes at a certain level. We start out at 22 to 1. So when you increase that, those kids are not getting as much time with that teacher in order to make their learning environment the best, to make them successful.
And then that's a time too, DV, when the board has to make that decision. Is it more reasonable to rezone or to bring in portables? The reason, I mean, and I've never been one of those people that like to throw portables out as a scare tactic, because I grew up in them. At the school I was at Midway, we had them for a while and it was fun. But let me just tell you, that was a culture. I can't think that far back. I was going to say 30 years. I think it's more than 30. But anyway.
No, I'm saying maybe 15.
Right. No, but there was a whole different culture then, right? And so what I probably should convey most importantly is that when we decide on portables, we're also taking money, instead of, buildings come out of our INS, which is a separate fund from what we pay teachers from. But if we have to bring in portables and mobile buildings, that comes out of our M&O, our maintenance and operation, which does affect the pot of money that we can pay teachers from. And so, it's one of those catch-22s. Neither one of those decisions is easy. And I'm not trying to be throw out scare tactics about portables, but I do not feel like they're the safest environment for our kids, especially at elementary level, because you're going to have people, or I would hope, and this would be my guess, is we're going to have somebody escort them to and from those mobile buildings. I would want to make sure that they're completely secure, because, inside the elementary schools now, you have key cards and people have to buzz in and all the things. And so when you go put in portables, it just brings on a whole nother plethora of not only issues, but additional needs, right? That, in my opinion, we should be putting towards a long-term solution versus a short-term solution. And so I would rather be proactive minded and long-term minded, because we know we're going to be around for the long haul, not just the short term, and put those funds towards a long-term solution that will serve us well into the future. Because I just think that's more efficient use of our dollars.
So fluff was the word yesterday. It was thrown around. Fluff. I got acquainted with fluff yesterday.
Yes.
So Proposition A, and one of the board members said, let's not repackage A and just throw it out there again. Let's see what we really, really need out of it. It sounds like elementary schools. Is that what you foresee that looking like, Tammy? I know that there's got to be vote. There's a whole board that's going to have to talk about this and vote. But kind of as far as the direction, because you are the president, do you see that being, hey, 2 elementary schools? That's where we're going.
Well, now we've gone from a crystal ball to reading 6 other people's minds. So I appreciate the ease with which you put that burden on me. No, I'm totally kidding. We have a great group of trustees. We've got a super team. I really love that everybody brings a different perspective. To me, that's the beautiful thing about humanity. I have no doubt that we will all come together. I don't think we will all easily agree on what that's going to be, but I think that serves the public well. So I trust in the staff to bring us exactly what we've asked to, because they have been so good about that. And they're so patient with us because we do ask a ton of questions and we probably go way outside of our lanes at times. But I'm just telling you, they are the most patient and kind people. And I have no doubt they'll bring us whatever we need to make that decision. But honestly, DV, I don't know, because we didn't spend a whole lot of time the other night at the meeting defining fluff. And I think everybody's definition is going to be a little different, but that's okay. The great thing is that it will all be discussed in the public. And our meetings are, they're videoed for everybody to see. So if you can't come, you can watch later and see what the discussion is. And I would beg people, we've gotten a bad rap lately about putting out surveys and then not listening. The problem is when you have a culture that is as diverse as ours, we can't please everybody.
Really?
And that's the unfortunate thing. I would love to. And the worst thing is going to sleep at night and realizing that, there are some of your probably closest friends that are really upset with you for a decision that you made. But these positions are not easy. And we have to make the decisions based on what's best for the most. And so even when we ask people's opinions and we put out surveys, it truly is to get feedback, because every person sitting up here, I promise you, they want to make the most people they can happy, and they want to serve the students and the teachers as best they can. And the unfortunate thing is that's never going to be 100%. But I do feel like with this board and with everybody's backgrounds and everybody's diverse needs and passions for different pockets of kids and populations, I think we'll come up with something that serves the most students, teachers, and even families best. And so the reason I put the parameters of A on there is because I felt like we needed to pare it down to simple necessities. I didn't mean to imply in any way that we're just going to take A and put it back out there. I think we understood by the end of the night, let's just take A and make that our starting point and just go from there. And like I said, I think we're going to go through every single thing with a fine tooth comb and figure out what can we put before the voters that they can understand not only what we're asking for, but the issues that those things will resolve. And again, it's going to be one of those things. It's going to be left up to the voters. They get to decide. So the discussion will be, I'm sure, good, just like last night on Monday. And hopefully we can come to some resolution so we can move forward, because I don't see any way forward where we can't continue to provide buildings for these students to be housed in the short term or long term. And that's why one of the things I do feel is I can say pretty assuredly is that we will move forward with something in November. And that's just knowing what our timeline is, because like Sandy said, it looks like 2025-26 school year, we're going to have one school that's already 14% over capacity. And then by 26-27, we're up to 3 campuses that are over capacity. And so given that kind of a timeline, I don't think it would be prudent for us to put off trying to move forward with the bare necessities of what we feel we need as a district.
And you know what, and I don't editorialize, but if I could suggest one thing, is definitely more informational meetings. You have and one of the board members brought this up, like, pictures. This is like Walnut Grove says about Midlothian right there, Walnut Grove Road. You have houses, and the plan is massive. It's a massive plan that's going to curve and go through 287 and then going the other way towards more the center of Midlothian. It's expanding, and all those houses, I mean, there's going to be kids in those houses. There's going to be some kids there, and they got to go somewhere, and maybe talking about that and bringing back the voters.
Yeah, I think Mr. Dillo had a great idea, and I hope that we can come forward with that. And that was to get our demographers to present us with a large map that we can put in the boardroom, and every time we meet, update that map with the new demographic numbers. Because you're right, you drive any direction in this town right now, and it is apparent that we are growing at every direction. And roads are crowded. Maybe I'm spending more time at stoplights than everybody else, but it's apparent to me that we are growing. And I just want to make sure that we do a good job serving these students well. And that we can keep good teachers too.
It's certainly bigger than when I got here in just my little short time of 2014. In 2014, I had cows across the street. They're not cows. There are some big houses over there, and there are kids that were added to MISD from there.
Yeah.
So I definitely seen growth. But one last thing, and that was the tax rate. I know we had discussed what the tax rate was proposed, and I don't remember the exact number. I'm sorry, Sandy, that my brain sometimes, but on a political, Tammy, people, this is something that comes up every year. Property taxes, ouch. During the it just so happened that the tax bills came out when this bond was coming. I mean, people saw massive growth in their taxes, or at least their the values of their homes, and some people are concerned. Maybe some of the older residents that I can't continue to pay this. Now my house started off at $900 a month, and now we're at $1,800 a month. I can't afford this. So, what do you do with the tax rate, knowing that this is happening? How do you speak to that?
Well, first of all, I'll say no one wants those to go up. And the rates have not gone up, and you probably made that pretty clear, but I want to reemphasize the rates have continued to go down, partially because the state's compression, and then secondly, just because we have chosen not to do that when we know that our community's hurting. The issue is the value's going up. So if you're not going to move, you don't care about the value. You care about the taxes you're paying each year. And I'm like you, I don't plan on moving. So that affects me too, as a business owner and a property owner here in Midlothian. But what I will say is every year I try to look at this, and within our area, we are still one of the lower rates, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes,
and
correct.
So we're one of the lower rates, but then we also give that 10% off the top of your value. And I believe there's only two in the area, us and one other, maybe Crowley. I may be misspeaking. Crowley, that gives that. So the thing is, if we want to continue to keep in our motto and on our website that we're offering an excellent product, we have to be able to produce excellent teachers and excellent academic outcomes. And we are trying our best to do that on the budget that we've been given. But if we want to continue with excellence, that has to come from somewhere. We can't have a sufficient budget and excellent outcomes. It's it's a catch-22, and nobody that I know of, and I said this in the meeting the other night, moves here and says, "Oh, we moved here because the schools were adequate. We moved here because there was a sufficient academic outcome at Midlothian ISD." And I'm not saying that that's impossible, but it's definitely a tough job to have a fixed budget, but continue to see your academic outcomes and all that increase. Most people, when they're getting better, they're putting more resources or something into the mix of their product. And I'm just talking in a general business sense. You don't normally have a stable budget, but hugely increased output. I mean, usually those things go up at the same time. And I'm not proposing an increased tax rate. I hope we can avoid that. But at the same time, nobody elected me and said, you're going to need to be a trustee that keeps the budget at the same level for the full 6 or 9 years, whatever I'm going to be here. Everybody I talked to said, you've got to keep our schools good. You've got to keep it excellent for our students. We need kids that can get out and go to college or go to trade school and be successful in life. And so for me, my eye is on that prize. And, secondary is to keep it affordable. So that's kind of what I felt like my priorities as a trustee should be is, yes, keep it as affordable as we can, but continue to produce the excellence that people have come to expect from Midlothian ISD. So
has there been consideration on lowering that tax exemption from 10%?
It was a discussion, but I don't think it was a discussion because when we got to the point that we could not give raises, we asked Sandy to give us every possible option. So I think she kind of got darts thrown at her, but she did what we asked. And I don't think that option was really something that the board or anybody wanted to do, but it was an option we wanted to look at because I don't think a lot of people even realized that they got that. Right. There's a lot of people I've talked to, they're like, oh, we didn't even realize that MISD did that. So I think what you said before about the bond, we as a district, as a board, everything, we have got to get our story out a little better. I think we need to communicate better, make sure people know the whole story and the whys behind a lot of the things we do. Because when you don't tell your story, guess what? Somebody else is going to tell it. And it's usually not accurate or as positive as the reality, right? So
Mhm.
I think it goes back to making sure people understand those things.
So I'm going a little bit longer, but we're covering some really good stuff. So audience, bear with me because this is some good information. So the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is the superintendent search, because the superintendent is the leader. They're going to lead the district into the future. I mean, under your, your board, but they lead the day to day. They make the day to day happen. So this person is going to be important. Unfortunately, the last superintendent was here kind of a short time. It's kind of general with superintendents, but that this next superintendent has to deal with the culture, deal with academic outcomes, deal with maybe social issues. What are some of the things that you're going to be looking for, and what have you done to get community input into this next superintendent?
Well, so the first thing we've done as far as the community feedback is we did put a survey online on, I think, social media and on the website. I do think that they're planning some maybe town halls. We talked about different avenues of doing that, especially given that it's the summer and people are on vacation. It's relatively difficult to get people together in the summer, but we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. We've even considered some Zoom town halls where people can come on a live Zoom and present their questions and those be answered. We haven't worked out the details of that, and I can't give you the dates of that yet, but that is in the works. I will tell you that the application process went live. I don't know the name of the website, but it's all the superintendents that are looking know the name of the website. What's it called? Do you know?
Texas ISD.
I think it's Texas ISD. Yeah, that's right. I think you're right. I'm sorry. I'm not an educational world specialist, so I'm usually on insurance websites. But anyway, we have gotten a good bit of interest. The lady who's leading that search, Ann Dixon, I spoke with her, and she's very happy so far with the interest in the job. And we will definitely ask for the community input. And I've been through this one time before, and I've told people that I know Dr. Fay wasn't here for very long, but like you said, the lifespan of superintendents has continued to go down. When I first came on board, it was like 7 to 10 years. And just in the 6 or 7 years I've been here, it's down to the average is like 2.7. So, we can't fault people though for pursuing bigger and better things for their own families. I hate it for us personally, but if we're going to produce kids, excellent students, and excellent teachers, we've got to do that throughout our whole program, right? And we've got to support everybody in success, whatever it looks like. We are sad, though, that she left so quickly, and we're hopeful that the next person we get will stay 10 years. But then somebody else also said, they're like, well, if they stay 10 years, it's probably because nobody else wants them. So, it's one of those things as a board. We're going to definitely, we've got some great people that are going to help cultivate and do this search. And like I said, I've been through the process before, so at least I've got that under my belt. And we're going to move forward and try to find the best fit for Midlothian based on the feedback we get from the community and the staff. And of course, like I said, the board has the final say in the interview process. And it's a good process, and I felt very good about it before when we went through it and how we did it. It was very meticulous, and anyway, it produced great outcomes, I thought.
How important is it to have someone who's not only well qualified, but maybe diverse?
Yeah, I think it's super important because our community is changing. And I think just over the last 5 years, I think everybody's had to be more acclimated to that diversity component, right? And I think that's important. But I also think, DB, for just my personal opinion, not only as a trustee, but as a parent and as a community member for 27 years, and it's a word kind of like fluff, but it's the fit's important, right? How this person will fit within the culture of MISD and the produce what we want here. Because I always, some people called it the Midlothian mystique, but I've always been, I guess, I don't know, what's the word? I think Midlothian's awesome. I think it's special. I've always called it Mayberry, right? I never thought that I would leave my hometown of Waco, but we got here and my husband said, we're going to Midlothian. And I said, middle of where? And I came here 27 years ago and just absolutely fell in love with it. But for me, the mystique is the people, right? Because we have a lot of people that are very gracious and kind and caring. And people call it the Midlothian mystique. So we've got to find somebody that fits into that culture and will come alongside of us and continue to produce the things that we have found to be important for our students, staff, and community. So
definitely has to fit the community. It's just like one of the things that came out recently was that Texas, for the first time ever, was a minority majority state. It's changing. The demographics are changing. I'm sure that the schools are seeing that, and you know that. But it's always somebody. I mean, for me personally, I'd love to see somebody who has a heart for special education. That's where my heart is. You know, those kids are usually not the ones talked about. They don't win the big trophies. They don't go to state. They you know, they go day to day and try to learn. That's where my heart is. But you know, hey, I'm not the one choosing. You guys are, and I trust you guys to do something that's best for the community. I'm gonna have you close out, Ms. Toby, to the people of Midlothian. This is your turn to speak to them.
Well, I would just ask that, you know, when we ask for your feedback, we truly want your feedback. People spend a lot of time putting negative comments and posts out there about us asking for feedback when they could be giving us feedback. And so that is truly what we want. And, you know, whether it's negative, neutral, or positive, it helps us. But I would just ask people to be gracious when, you know, when they ask for us to paint the walls purple and we paint them pink, that they are not going to come blow us up at the next meeting, because, you know, we're here to serve the most, the best. And that's the way I look at it. We want to serve the most of our constituents and the biggest population we can in the best way possible. And sometimes that's not by painting the walls purple. But just understand that everybody up here, everybody on this board, our entire staff, and I can say this in all assuredness, is in it to win it for our kids and for this community. Nobody here wants to put out a survey and then call that 10% and say, sorry, you lost. We want everybody to be happy, and we want to serve everybody well. But the unfortunate thing is that it's just, we're asking for the feedback so that we can make the best decision possible. And one thing that's not possible is to make 100% of the people happy. I learned that very quickly in this position. So anyway, I don't like saying that, but I want people to be realistic in their expectations and understand that we're all here with hearts to serve. And the only way we can do that is to actually get your feedback. And I know sometimes criticism is necessary, and we take that too. But just, if you would please give us your feedback, we do want it, and we do read it all, and we take it all in when we make decisions. So we do appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You know, I appreciate every time you come on. I know that this isn't always the most comfortable thing to, you know, field questions. And so, you know, but I know that you have a heart for your community. And, you know, I appreciate that you come on here on my little show and talk about these things. I believe in informing the community, and you always help me in that. And I appreciate that. So,
well, I thank Sandy for being here, because I'll tell you, I still get butterflies. I'm always like, Sandy, I don't know the numbers. So I appreciate you inviting Sandy to come with me, because it affirms what we're doing. And I want to say to the community, she's amazing. So
Sandy, I appreciate you. I mean, I know you didn't know me from Adam, and yet, you know, you're here, and, you know, I kept my word. I told you that you don't do political. I was going to ask you numbers, and that's how I work. So can you guys stick around real quick after the show?
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Y'all take care.